Hi everybody, Chris here from Truly Holistic. Now we're going to be doing a question and answer video now. So in my last, I put a few posts out there, and also the last video I did here on the channel was offering an opportunity for people to ask any questions about particularly the tools that I sell and distribute through Truly Holistic. And we've got some great questions that we're going to go through today. So let's jump straight into it. So first of all, I'm just looking at my YouTube channel because we're going to go through all the different social mediums and look at the questions. Let's have a look. We'll just scroll down. Okay, so Martin Michael, who won the prize of the 10 video, 10 topic over 10 days competition, he's got a question or a few questions here. Please explain how to program crystals with specific etheric template. I would like to imprint my stones with the sun ring and place them around the house. Okay. Also, what type of crystals are the best to use, and if there are differences at all? Thank you. Okay. So he'd like to imprint or program his stones. And one thing we must mention here is that crystals have their own natural programming or their natural frequency that they emit. For example, I've got a shungite sphere that I place in my Ascension Cube, which is my main geometry that amplifies my intent when I'm doing sessions with people, and which makes them unique, right? Shungite different to amethyst, amethyst different to to quartz crystal, rose quartz, and so on. But I believe that really the power of geometry, because you've got to remember that crystals are geometrically structured, and that's why they can hold on to information. So that's where the word information comes from, is that it can be held because it's in formation, which is about geometry. Now, I use geometry tools, as you can see in the background, but a lot of people also use crystals in a similar way. Now, what I do like about crystals is because they are geometrically structured, is they can hold information and you can program crystals. So this question is about, you can just use your intent, okay, an intent, and place that intent within your crystal. So for example, shungite here, or I've got another crystal here, is you just voice your intent into it. So you can do it that way. If you want to do it in a more profound way, you can use a geometry tool to then voice through it and place that intent in there. He's actually mentioned the fact he can use the sun ring, okay? And that's a great option because the sun ring is a broadcaster of intent. And a sun ring can be used in a number of ways. You can definitely use the sun ring with intent to place that intent into a crystal. But also you can place the crystal within the sun ring, and the sun ring will broadcast the frequency and the vibration, or whatever you program the crystal with, to be amplified out. Okay? So for example, a crystal that size, it's going to have a certain field to it, but when you place it in the sun ring will broadcast that field even further so. Okay? So, for example, yeah, definitely, you can place any programming or any intent into the crystal, and you can place it around your house. There's no doubt about it. You can even amplify its reach as well through intent alone. Okay, and what that's essentially bringing forth is that the most powerful creator is us ourselves. Okay, a lot of the tools and the geometry tools and so on are just training wheels to realize your full potential. And we'll get into a bit more with that in regards to the geometric devices. So, going back to the part of the question for Martin, explain how to program crystals with specific etheric template. Now, I also got another question and a few questions about the etheric template and what that's all about. Now, the etheric template is, let's use me as an example. Okay, and this is for everybody out there. It's not just about me, okay? Every single one of us, we're living within a reality, okay? This reality here. But we are just a piece of our consciousness is connected to us here. All there are scattered pieces of your consciousness in other realities too. Okay, and within those realities is a version of you that exists within those realities, and that's quite often called your higher selves. And we never have one higher self, we have a number of them. And another way to look at it is it's like your source family or your soul family, where it's like a family tree. They're all branched into all these different realities. Okay, and when they all those aspects or components of your consciousness come together, then that is what we call your true self, or what we could call your source self. Okay, it's not about source and saying externally there's one source for all of us. No, there is an origin for each individual, each one of us. Okay, so keeping that in mind is we call them higher selves for a particular reason, and that's because they're in a reality that is perhaps more advanced than we are here. Okay, we also have lower selves, which are in realities that are perhaps not as high as where we are now, and perhaps more under control and more needing to evolve. Okay, but we're not going to get into that so much. Now, when we want to bring in your etheric template, the whole idea of an etheric template is when here, if you have a tool, let's say I'm holding this ascendant tool, okay? Each higher self of you or version of you in these other realities also holds a version of this tool too, okay? Because you're all bound and connected with each other, which we call the quantum physics term, quantum entanglement. That's how you're connected. Okay, so because you're all of the same, because you're all of the same consciousness, you are all connected. Okay, and that's how it should be. We do get into trouble every now and then where there are disconnections. We call that interconnection disconnections. But we do that in the sessions and we work on those sorts of things. So, in those higher realities where your higher selves are, they may not have it like that. Okay, they may just have the consciousness of it or the energy of it, but here we have an actual physical aspect that we can feel and touch, and we know it's there, right? Okay, so let's say you have this tool, but let's say you are out and about and you didn't have it on you. Okay, you didn't have this on your person. Well, what you can do is you can just connect to your higher aspects of yourself and bring in the etheric aspect of this tool to you at that time, so you can still use it even though you don't have the physical tool with you. And that's what I call the etheric template. The etheric template of this tool resides in those higher realities, which you can always bring here because you're connected to those higher aspects or those higher realities, because part of you exists within that, another version of you. Okay, I hope this is making sense. So you can just program that into you, just like we program a crystal. Okay, we can get a crystal, we can place intent in it. Dr. Emoto showed that work with just using intent with water. Okay, especially the better the structure of the water, the more it can hold on to memory and information. Okay, so you have water and then you're just talking to the glass or write an intention, a note, and that would have an effect on the water. Okay, so in regards to your etheric template, you can, again, all the tools that you make or the tools that you purchase from me or so on, understand that when you purchase that, all of your higher aspects of yourself and the other realities have that tool too. Okay, and even if you might not physically have that, if you establish a great connection with self, which we should all be doing, because of where the whole thing about ascension is about revisiting your true self to know who you are, why you're here, all the big answers, is establishing a great connection with your higher selves. So all you do is you just call upon, bring through the etheric template of the ascended tool or a particular tool, and you have that there, that disposal. So it's a great thing to keep in mind. Now, me being somebody that's being channeled new qubit measures, and we're getting these new designs that we're putting together. The cell phone tabs, that the latest version of cell phone tabs we're making, we've actually made the cell phone tabs without any tensor rings in them whatsoever, but they have the etheric template of a couple of the qubit measures in the cell phone tab. Okay, because the cell phone tabs are made out of shungite. Okay, and like anything that's structured, it can hold information. So we bring the etheric template of a couple of the rings, the activation qubit ring and the gateway qubit ring, and we put it into the cell phone tab. So even though the cell phone tab doesn't have a physical ring in it, tensor ring in it, it has the energy, the etheric template of those two rings. So that's what I mean by etheric template. So I hope I've answered those questions. Now, the last part of the question, also, what type of crystals are the best to use? Simple answer, what resonates to you? Okay, I do like shungite. I've got a video on my channel, YouTube channel, that was done, interview with Wayne Gados, okay, from Crystalline Incorporated, who makes a lot of the Sun Ring, the Neutralization Ring, Divinity Ring tools that also sell. He is in Canada, Alberta, Canada, and he's been using this particular crystal for 20 odd years or 25 years. So he knows a few things about this particular one. And he mentions this is like the king of the crystals, because you can make this crystal work like any other crystal. If you want it to be amethyst, it can be amethyst by programming it that way, where some of the other crystals are not so much like that. But check that interview out in regards to shungite. But my simple answer is what resonates to you, and you'll feel what crystal is trying to get your attention, and that will be your choice. Again, really trust in your intuition, and don't believe your intuition should be like that person or that person. It's going to be unique to you, because that intuition, especially if you're connecting to self or higher self, is in line with you, no one else. Okay, let's just have a look. Okay, so Martin has some other questions. So, what tool is best to use in the car to improve driving conditions, traffic safety, performance, lifespan? I love that question, because that's really looking outside the box. Now, currently within my car, on my dashboard, I have a harmonizer. Okay, and what a harmonizer is essentially a coil like this in the middle, with rings going off it, right? We have, I'm trying to think, 3 or 4 rings that go around it. And the whole idea of a harmonizer, I'll just see if I've got one like that. There we go, I'll show you this one. Okay, so that's the whole idea of that effect. So you'd have that in the middle, right? So let's see, you'd have it like in the middle, and then you've got the rings going up. The whole idea of that is the coil has polarity. So it draws from the environment negative field or negative energy, which then creates a negative manifestation to occur. And if you're driving on the road, a negative manifestation is being involved in a car accident, right? And how many times do you hear that, hey, when you're out on the road, you can only control what you're doing, but you can't control all the other people that are driving around? Well, through these tools you can, because this particular tool, the harmonizer, creates a very big field that can then affect everyone within that field. So that draws in the negative field, transmute it, positive field goes back out, and then the rings, because the rings by themselves, this one ring here, creates a column of light. And if I put it around that way, a column of light that's going that direction and that direction, several miles or several kilometers. Okay, so you can see how far it can reach, right? And when you put it out like that, it creates a sunshine effect of 360 degrees. Okay, so what this is doing, just like a toroidal effect, bringing the negative field in, going through, positive field out, right? So it's drawing that negative field out from a long distance, bringing it in, going through, pushing positive field out. So I've got something similar to that, smaller than that, on the dashboard of my car. That's a tool that I don't particularly make or put on my website at this point, because I'd like to perfection it a bit better before I put it out there to sell under Truly Holistic. But of the tools that I currently do make and sell on Truly Holistic, what would I recommend? That's a great question. I would probably recommend the Ascension Activator, just because of its effect that can reach out to 300 feet. Okay, so that's a pretty decent amount of space to transform the energy. So it's definitely got some reach to it, where it transmutes the field into a more positive field. So I would probably say the Ascension Activator would probably be the best tool in regards to that. I'm just trying to think of some of the others. You can just use a coil itself, as long as it's direction towards where you're driving, and that negative field will just be sucked in and positive field come out the back end of it. That will definitely work, but I would definitely recommend a generator or a harmonizer or an Ascension Activator. Again, the gateway is something that we have made, but again, still making adjustments to that. I'm actually working on making a Tesseract cube in a very similar way, where it will broadcast the field out so far as well. That's more specific to what I do here at Truly Holistic. That's another tool that we're playing around with. Next question, a little bit off topic. How to fall asleep when traveling? I had problems to sleep in overnight flights or bus, even when really tired. It used to be easy, but recent years, all the time, I'm awake and I've found nothing to help. I'm not going to be eating pills. Okay, so now with travel, I don't know if this is going to be specific about the tools, probably is, but when you're traveling, okay, and I don't know what type of distance amount of traveling you're talking about. I guess overnight flights, I guess that's a decent flight, is you're going over many time zones, okay, and your body finds it hard to calibrate to it, hence what they call jet lag. The things that they've found that work for jet lag is two simple things, even without using a tool. Is one, to ground yourself. Okay, so get your shoes off, go barefoot onto the surface of the earth wherever you land or wherever you deciding to stay after a big flight. And the second one is to sun gaze. So when the sun is about to set, the last couple of discs, or the first couple of discs when the sun is rising, is to look directly straight into that sun, because it's safe to look at the sun at that time. All the UV light has been diminished, that blue light, and you're looking at when the sun's really orangey and reddy color. And what that does is recalibrates you to where you are on the planet. Okay, so people that have done those things, especially when they do both of them together, have found that they can remove the jet lag and they can get more into the time zone of wherever they are. Okay, so that definitely would be something that would help you in regards to that, Martin. We know that these tools are consciousness tools, and these tools are all about connecting you back, your consciousness, into the heart space and keeping it away from here. And what's that light, or what's the light that is in that sacred heart area? And that's orange and yellow, and that's directly connected to when we sun gaze. So I do get a lot of people that have grounding difficulty, and the way that we do it in sessions and grounding people is connecting them back into that sacred heart. So all these tools work on reconnecting you back to here, and also your higher aspects of self, which is through the heart. It's not up here or anywhere else, it's through the heart. So that would definitely help with your grounding effect. definitely these tools that are working on keeping you connected into the heart space and with your consciousness. They would definitely help in regards to these issues. And the last question from Martin is, what are the exact measurements currently used qubits? Okay. At this point in time, I haven't disclosed the qubit measures of the three main qubits we now use here at Truly Holistic, which are the activation, the ascension, and the gateway. Okay. And again, like everything, I always go by what I've channeled. I never make. I may come up with certain things that come up that are or drawn to me or asked upon me, but usually my higher aspects of self make the big calls. Okay, and they have not given me clearance to share those qubit measures at this point in time. But there are 3 qubit measures that we used before we got to the activation, and that was called a DNA activation qubit. An RNA activation qubit, a telomere activation qubit, and also a dragon qubit, which are very powerful qubits, which were brought to me as well. Okay, so you will not find those anywhere else. And I have disclosed and shared those qubit measures on my website. If you go to the links page on my website and just scroll down to tense rings or making tense rings, you'll see those qubit measures there. And obviously when I get the all clear to share the ones that I'm currently using, we'll do the same thing. But at this point in time, we haven't got there. The important thing about these qubit measures were, because they were channeled through, they're part of my etheric template. So I have that as connection to my etheric template. Again, the etheric template is something unique to each individual, and I'm the person that makes those tools. So not only I'm measuring the length of the twisted wire to that specific activation or ascension or gateway, so we bring that spectrum of frequency through, but because I am the one that has access to my etheric template where that came from originally, and I'm the one that creates the tool, it's not as easy as you think with just giving out the qubit measure out. When you purchase the tool, as I said, you purchase the tool, then your higher aspects of yourself also have a version of this, and have that part of your etheric template. So you will have that, but we will get there in regards to sharing the qubit measure. Let's move on. So next question. Okay, here's a question on my Facebook page by Autumn Star Carlton. Okay. Okay, so she's messing around. She's talking about having a ring, okay, that she has on a water faucet, and it got rusty. Is there any way to clean it without messing up its energy? For sure, you will not mess up its energy to start off with. I'll mention that. And the way that you clean your rings is very simple. Okay, all you need to do is just soak it, whether that's half an hour or a few hours. Usually, you won't probably need to do it any more than half an hour. Just soak it in some lemon juice or vinegar, and just let it sit in there, and you'll notice that it polishes up just sitting in it. And then after that, you can use some steel wool and just give it a nice shine afterwards, and a lot of the times it comes up like brand new again. Next question. Okay. So Alina Vast mentions, I would like to know more about connecting to the etheric templates and how can tools be applied for this purpose. I think we've already answered that question. Next question, Ruth Smith mentions, what's the best one for a cough and arthritis? Well, we'd need to know the specific nature of what's causing your cough and also what's causing your arthritis. So I don't really like to specifically give an absolute answer, because everybody's the causes for a cough or even the causes for arthritis can be slightly different from one person to the other, and therefore one tool may work for one person, one tool may not work for the other. But what I will mention about the arthritis is we do have a particular tool, a bracelet that we sell, which is called the Acuvac coil bracelet. That is very good for. We made that. I made that in regards to anyone that had arthritic hands, carpal tunnel issues, which is usually a calcification issue, which a lot of the arthritis problems are because of that. And it's made up of a bracelet that is twisted copper made from the activation qubit, and it's also got a little coil, very much like this, that's wrapped around the bracelet itself, and that's made with the gateway qubit, so you get both the activation and the gateway qubits together, and that creates an anti-inflammatory effect, and it reduces a lot of inflammation in the hands that is caused by the arthritis itself, and carpal tunnel, and even further up the arm. So that's what I recommend in regards to that, especially if it's in the hand and the arm. But I would recommend, if you got a really chronic issues with arthritis, would be to do some clearing work, so we can find out specifically what's going on, and then with you individually, Ruth, then we'd ask the question, what tools would be ideal for that situation to resolve your arthritis and your cough. Okay. I'll just go to my other Facebook page, see if there's any other questions there. Okay. Now, I've got some questions from my Instagram. Let's just bring that up. Okay. So, Quantum Witch Mum, or Mom. We say mum here, M-U-M, by the way, in New Zealand, but over in the States, it's mom, M-O-M. First question, etheric template, what is this? I think we've essentially answered that one. Next question, more info on the tools, qubit measures, story behind the creation of them. How did you get into all this stuff? Okay, so there's a few questions within that question, which I'll be delighted to answer. So, in regards to more info on the tools, is that specifically I distribute also the crystalline energy range, which comes from Wayne Gatos in Alberta, Canada. So for a lot of those tools for people in the Northern Hemisphere, we quite often just ship them from there. It doesn't make sense for them to be shipped to New Zealand, for them to be shipped straight back into the Northern Hemisphere. For people in Europe as well, and we'll get them sent straight from there. But majority of the tools from that range, we just get sent from Canada now. We don't stock any here in New Zealand. And then obviously we've got the range of tools that are more tensor ring tools, or tensor tools that I create here. And the tensor tools and the whole idea of a tensor ring originally came from a guy called Slim Sperling in the early 90s, which he's passed away now, but his company, which still continues, by his widow, is Lifelight Technology, I think it is. That's what they call them now, which they've copyrighted. But we can go ahead and call them tensor rings, and there's a lot of people out there that make tensor rings now. And essentially, I guess what I can add in regards to my story was, I was already selling those crystalline energy tool range, which includes the Sun Ring, the neutralization ring, the Divinity ring, the Beamer, the Triple Pyramid, and so on and so on, the Vesica Pisces. And I really got into this tensor technology, and I started to get a few products from a local company that were in Australia, and they make some wonderful products, which the Sacred Knowledge Energy Tools, and I was loving them. I was starting to distribute their tool range, but what I was getting, because I'm a healer and I'm a channeler and intuitive healer, I was getting all these ideas for new qubit measures and new designs. Like, It'd tell me, we need to do this, we need to activate this person's telomeres. We need to activate the RNA, it's dormant, and all these sorts of things. And it would keep telling me that you need to make a tool to do that. So instead of thinking, well, do I go to someone else and get them to make me, it brought me to a junction where I had to decide, perhaps, of all these designs in my head, I need to learn how to do this thing. I need to make them myself. So that's essentially what that evolved into. I was getting all these qubit measures, and at this point in time, Slim Sperling brought through the two main ones from when he was here was this Royal Sacred Qubit and the Lost Qubit. And the Lost Qubit was from this help with a mathematician, and I think the first one, the Royal Sacred Qubit, was in regards to the Egypt with the Giza pyramids. So they're all connected into sacred land sites, I guess, or landmarks around the planet, and they brought through a specific frequency. So for the Royal Sacred Qubit, it was 144, and Lost Qubit 177. And then there's been other people that have brought other qubit measures. You can look it up on Sacred Measurements, I think it's called. It's a website. If you just Google search Sacred Measurements, it will take you to a website where you can find a number of qubit measures if you're interested in making tools yourself. And that's what I started doing. But I didn't do that for very long, because the reason why I got into making them, because I wanted to make new qubit measures. I was getting downloads of new qubit measures all the time, and it was telling me this is what you need to do. As a frontier, we're wanting to do this and do that, and there's nothing else out there, we're going to have to make it. So that's what we did. And I'm a huge, I love the people that are making qubit measures, but I'm really trying to embrace people to really trust their own intuition and realize that you can really make any qubit measures depending on what you want to anchor in. So if your attention or intention is about anchoring in something, well, it must have a qubit measure to allow that anchoring in of that frequency or a spectrum of frequency, and you can make a tensor ring out of it, right? You need to know the qubit measure that will anchor that in. So started making them, as I said earlier, made the RNA activation qubit measure first, ring, and then the telomere, and then after that the dragon qubit, which was bringing in a consciousness of the dragons, which was the most powerful tensor ring that we had at that time. It was trying to push me away from the more physical qubit measures of the Royal Sacred and then even the Lost Qubit, saying that we needed to evolve and push on from those qubit measures. They were great for their time, but what we do know about energy is always flowing and always changing, and we need to evolve with it. We don't just use things from decades ago. We've got to be connected and evolve to the new energies. So all of a sudden, the big qubit measure that came through was the activation qubit. And all of a sudden it said to me, you don't need the RNA activation, you don't need the telomere activation. The activation qubit itself will activate everything, okay? Because the activation, the thing with the RNA and the telomere activations, they were specific frequencies, just like the sacred Royal Qubit and the Lost Qubit. But the activation qubit ring brings a spectrum of frequency, okay? So it's not just like a radionic device where we're just going to place one frequency in you. It's got a intelligence or consciousness to it, because it's going to create a column of light of a spectrum of frequency, or higher bandwidth of spectrum, vibration of frequency that you maybe haven't been connected to at this point. And your higher aspects of yourself is going to pick and choose what is required or what is needed for you at the particular time. So it wasn't just a radionic device, it was intelligence and consciousness behind it, and it was your consciousness. So That was the first one that was brought through. And the second one that was brought through was the Ascension qubit, which again brought another spectrum of frequency, which was another level up, higher. Okay, so the activation qubit is all about bringing your awareness and your consciousness back to the Sacred Heart. Okay, and that is powerful in itself, just doing that, because when we do that, we keep our vibration high. Because when our consciousness is in the mind, that's when we lower our vibration and our frequency. And things like Wi-Fi and things like cell phone towers and 5G and all, that's when it really messes us up, because it deactivates us. Okay, where we want to be activated, we want to be like a solar panel to the light vibrations, the light activations coming through. And then, I found out that those light activations only come through when we're in the heart space. When we're here, we don't. So that activation qubit ring is a very vital part of the tools that we make here at Treaty Holistic, and it's still going strong. We're still using it. Now, the next one, Ascension qubit, is more about connecting you to your source self. So that's why it goes up another spectrum of vibration frequency, even higher than the activation. So these are progression thing, where we connect here, because we can't connect to here. We can't connect to our true self or source self if we're not here already. So hence the activation came first. Now, what came about after the ascension was what we call the gateway qubit, which is the middle ground between here and connecting to true self or source self. And the gateway is, again, just like what it says, it's like a portal or a wormhole or gateway that the Sacred Heart's one end of it, or one opening of it. And when we go through that Sacred Heart, we go through the gateway. And what we call the gateway now is our inner universe, or our quantum tunnel, which connects us to all aspects of our consciousness, which are all our higher selves, which reside in all these different realities that are within that universe, within your gateway. And I really think that's why mainstream science is going towards a multiverse, because we are all individually a universe in ourselves. And we've been really looking in the wrong direction. We think the vastness is out there. What about if the vastness is within you, and the universe within you, and you're just projecting what's within you out here? It's the other way around. A lot of information is telling me that's more valid. We'll be doing a video about that. But so those are the three main qubit measures that we use. We've just had recently a new one called the infinite qubit, which we're making with an infinity symbol. It's the specific infinite qubit measure that anchors that infinity energy, which again is taking us another step further. So we use numerology here too. So 6 is the activation, 7 is the gateway, 8 is the infinite, and then 9 is that ascension qubit measure. So you can see how they all fit in, and they all work alongside each other in your ascension involvement. Okay, so I think I've talked about the tools in general, but they all have, because this tool here, the Ascendant, is made with the Ascension qubit, okay? But it's also, each ring symbolizes one of your higher selves, okay? And how many rings are there? There's 7. So it connects you with your higher aspects of yourself, but also it's using the source self connection, because, as I say, the consciousness of each one of your higher self is a piece of the consciousness, which, if you bring them all together, is your source consciousness. So, and plus this has got the lotus pennant geometry to it. So the geometry comes into it and imparts its what it does specifically. The qubit measure does as well. And also the numerology, the whole thing. So a lot of the tools that we're making are bringing in not only a qubit measure, we're bringing geometry, but we're also bringing numerology into it too. It's pretty cool. But they all do something slightly different, and we've put descriptions of them in the on the website on the products page. Okay, so I think we've talked about the story behind creation of them. Again, I just looked up a video on YouTube to learn how to make a tensor ring. and then using the cubic measures that was intuitively channeled. And as I say, you know, there there's a lot of, I think we're very scientifically minded with tensoring. We've got to be very precise to this and precise to this measure. But I think the whole idea of it is that if you create a great connection with your higher aspects of self, okay, your higher selves, your source connection, you can always ask, hey, I want to create this. Can you give me a cubic measure that is going to create that in my life? And it will give you a number, okay, and then you create a tensor ring to that length and then see how it feels. And you'll see how it feels. And it might be something specific to you, or it might be for a number of people. But don't be scared of trying that out. Now, the last part of the question, how did you get into this stuff? Well, that's a long story. I guess the short answer to that is, you know, for a majority of us, I think we all started off in a place where we had a health problem, you know, or I had allergies when I was a kid. When I was a teenager, and you know, my life got turned upside down. You know, when you're a teenager, you want to eat all the things that your friends are eating, and all of a sudden I couldn't. You know, and I thought it was the worst thing ever at the time. But on reflection on it now, it's why I've got to the point where I am now was because of that. And I think we can all do that in regards to our life. Is that a lot of people that are sensitive to a number of things will quite often point at the person on the street that's just going about their day, doesn't seem to have any problems, and people get very jealous that, you know, why me? Why did this happen to me? Well, perhaps it was allowing you to open doors for yourself to learn a little bit more about reality, and that's a blessing in disguise, isn't it? Really. Otherwise, you'd still be that person is walking around on autopilot mode and not knowing much about your existence. So that's how I originally started for me. And then I got really into, because I had to change my diet completely, and it was more my mother that had to do that, obviously, when I was a teenager. And then after a period of time, I got so knowledgeable about, you know, like what's MSG and all these additives that they're placing in the food. And then the question was, why are we doing that, right? And, you know, essentially a lot of the foods that we're eating out of packets were just chemical experiments, you know, not real food. So I got into nutrition, and I ended up becoming a nurse working in a hospital. And, you know, when we trained to become a nurse, you talked about how it's a holistic profession, but then you go into a hospital, and the hospital's not a holistic environment. So what you got trained was not necessarily what you became. So I got very disillusioned within only a few years of when I was working in the hospital. I saw that everyone was just throwing down pills and not really addressing their causes of their problems. And so I really read a lot of nutrition books, and not about just prevention of disease, but how do we reverse disease using supplements and using things that don't create all those massive side effects that pharmaceuticals do. So yeah, I started to do papers. I got a certificate in nutrition. I was on my way to getting a diploma in nutrition, which would have allowed me to become a registered nutritionist. And that was kind of the original plan, to get out of nursing and do that. But then all of a sudden I realised that, again, you know, there was all this stuff I was learning to become a nutritionist was advice about nutrition, which I didn't really agree with. The whole business aspect of nutrition. There was a lot of BS involved with it, with a number of stuff. And I thought, well, I'm just going to probably end up in the hospital, that, again, starting from scratch, trying to teach people about nutrition, about things that I didn't feel like my heart was into, right? So I kind of scrapped that idea, and I thought, well, I need to find something that doesn't have any BS to it. It's just what it is. And in the background, my grandmother was, as a child, she used color therapy, and so she was a color therapist and used different colored cottons, using it on a coil, and could heal people from a distance. You just have to write your name on a piece of paper. So I did have a little bit of a background of that, so I was aware of that sort of thing. And my mother, obviously, because it was her mother that was doing it, she was very much in line with that. She was always very, she tried to raise us very well with good food, and she was aware of all this stuff. So um, all of a sudden, my nana passed, and my mum was bestowed with all her colour therapy stuff, um, and she had this dowsing kind of stick that she used to use, my grandmother, where she'd check people's neck and backs for alignment issues, and my grandfather would do a chiropractic adjustment. So I knew all about this. So all of a sudden, I decided, well, maybe I should look into this. And there was another personal colour therapist in my local town because I was having issues with my neck and back, and he used to come and align, but he wouldn't physically touch me. He could just align through intent. So that was my first experience of, wow, just through intent you can make it a physical change. And I felt it. I was very sensitive to it. I could feel it happening straight away. And he always used to say that maybe you can do that. That's why you're so sensitive. Maybe you can do this work. So at that time, I just kind of put it to the side. But there's always a time and a place when all of a sudden it becomes evident that maybe that's the door I need to open. So all of a sudden, that's the door I opened, and everything just gradually evolved until where I am now, where this is what I do for a full-time business, is being a true quantum healer, which again has evolved in itself as well. So yeah, so it's been a heck of a journey. Now another question from Quantum Witch Mum. Uh, got the Sun Ring, which came with light instructions. Now there's a reason why, again, they're in crystalline incorporated range tools. They're made from Wayne Gatos in Alberta, Canada. But the reason why, because they're all consciousness tools, a lot of these tools have got very little instruction because you will find your specific way of using them. Okay? Now, the thing about, for example, we're going to use this tool again as an example, but this is very much in line with the Sun Ring, is these tools give you a greater connection to your higher aspects of yourself, not someone else's self or a collective consciousness, but yourself. So that's going to connect with you, and it's going to give you guidance to know how to use this the right way for you, not for someone else, but for you. So a lot of the tools have light instructions because of that reason. Okay. She mentions that she was querying whether it takes pain away, because she thought, well, it shouldn't be the opposite. The neutralization ring, which we accompany with the Sun Ring, neutralization ring draws out negative energy, and then the Sun Ring casts positive light back into it. You're right. It really is the opposite. The neutralization ring, which quite a lot of times we use before using the Sun Ring, is it draws out, it creates a vortex. We've got a bigger practitioner-sized neutralization ring here. And what the neutralization ring does, it creates a vortex. Why they work well together is one creates a clockwise vortex, one anti-clockwise vortex. I can't remember which one's which, but so this has got like a drawing effect. So it pulls the negative field out and then it transmutes it, where the Sun Ring broadcasts or pushes that light back in. So what this is essentially doing is drawing that field out. So you're leaving a void in that area for then the Sun Ring to cast its light into that area to restore it. So an example of pain is a concentration of negative field. So you'd want to use the neutralization ring first if you had the neutralization ring with the Sun Ring. Now, and you draw it out, and then once you felt, I can feel it shifting, you place that down and you place the Sun Ring to then fill that void. Now, let's say if you didn't have the neutralization ring, and you just had the Sun Ring, well, you can use your intent with the Sun Ring and say, pain false. Okay, so let's just pretend that's the Sun Ring. You place it, say you've got a sore shoulder, you place that on your shoulder and you go, pain false. Now, obviously, that may get you, for a lot of things, that might clear it just that alone. But if it's a specific thing that's causing your pain, then you might want to, if you've got especially intuition or dowsing ability, then you might want to dowse or get a little bit more information. The more specific the intent, the more specific the information is, the more precise your clearing will be when you use your intent with the sun ring. Okay. I think we have come to the end of the questions. I'm sorry if I've missed out anybody's question, but I think you've probably heard me talking enough for one day. So all these products that we've talked about and I've shown all on trulyholistic.net. If you go to the product page, and they have a description underneath about the tools. But again, just feel for what tool is drawing your attention, which again is trust your intention or trust your intuition. But if you are looking for a tool for a specific reason or a specific purpose, feel free to get in touch with me. You can go to the contact page on my website, trulyholistic.net, or just comment on this page here or underneath on my YouTube channel, and I'll be happily douse for you and find out what would be the most compatible for you for that particular purpose. But if you have any other questions, post below. I hope you've really enjoyed this video and got the answers that you've wanted for your questions. Until next time.